And I'll just maybe put it.
Hello, everybody. This is Mark. Amy's here, and Juliette is not asleep.
Hello.
When she should be.
Let's turn it down. Right, I'm going to try and get this. I'm going to put it on my 5G because this is not looking like a good signal. Or maybe it's just dark. Oh, do you mind putting the main lights on my tree, please?
Oh, yes.
Thanks. Yeah. How are you all? That should be a little bit better. You all right, Squeaky Pops? Who's that, baby girl? Is that you? Yeah.
So we have questions tonight.
Yeah. I started. Dodie asked, "What's your favorite vegetable to grow?"
Oh, that's a good question. I'd say
Cardoons.
Yeah, cardoons is a
That's
good
a
one
new one.
actually. It's I've been experimenting this year for the first time, and it's a really interesting vegetable because it's quite unusual. For those of you who don't know, it's the artichoke family, and it's you eat the stems of the leaves, and they really have a nice artichoke taste. And also, it's a local specialty of the Rhone Valley and the area around here. So it's quite a nice thing.
No Rosie Pops, don't.
For fun as much as for the taste, actually. So I don't always mind if don't taste amazing, as long as they're interesting. And I've been experimenting with the Chinese yam, which I've had growing in the garden for 2 years now, and I haven't harvested it yet, but because I'm still experimenting. So I'm looking at the question. Amy is the one who manages the channel, so I don't know anything about the internet and things. So how of roots that have been nibbling a few of them and digging some out because they were really young and not rooted very deeply. But apart from that, the ones that are still there are doing well. We've had a very rainy year, rainy spring, which means that it's a good year for growing leaves and rooting the vines. Not so good for producing grapes, but I'm not there yet, so it's so far I'm happy. What temperature range do we have here? I'd say semi-mountainous climate, which means that it can go to well below freezing. We've had minus 12 Celsius, so quite cold almost every year. This year was a bit milder, so minus 8 maybe. And we've had plus 40 when we had the heat waves. But the nice things is that even when it's really hot in summer, it cools down at night. So we have very high daily amplitudes, which makes it quite cooler than elsewhere. And we get a lot of microclimates on the estates. Partly because we're on a mountain ridge, which means that we have one side facing the sunrise and one side on the sunset. And so we have very different vegetation on the east and the west side of the ridge. And also we have different types of soil with some places that were old agricultural terraces that have a very deep and reasonably rich soil, and some that are, on the contrary, almost on the rock and that dry very quickly. So we have a whole range of soil conditions and also microclimates, because some of them are more or less sheltered than others. Which means that I'm able to experiment a lot of different things. The discovery of this year is that we've cleared a little bit of the estate on the west side, and I've discovered that we actually have a lot of water on there. And I've discovered that because we have trees that don't grow elsewhere on the estate, like willow or alder, which is quite unusual for the place where we live, the Ardèche, which is quite a dry area. So yeah, we have a lot of interesting climates to test. I'm looking at the other questions. The orchard is some issues on a few because of mole rats that have been digging the roots out, and also as they were quite young trees, they got a bit dry, and I spotted it a bit too late, so we've lost a few trees because of that. What else? I'm looking. So yeah, about the grapevines that are in our plot away from the main estate in Cornas, they're still too young. So are there plants that grow particularly well in Rosieres? Well, that's actually, we think that the name Rosieres comes from the Occitan, which means the place where the roses grow. And it's true that roses grow amazingly well. And one of my projects is to actually grow a rose garden. So we have two beautiful roses, in probably at least 70, maybe nearly 100 years old. They have a massive trunk at the base, and they flower incredibly beautifully. And I've tried to increase the amount of the diversity of roses we plant here. Last year, for instance, I planted an interesting botanical rose, a Chinese rose called the Rosa gigantea, the giant rose. And in just 1 year, it grew a vine that's nearly 3 meters tall. And it's been flowering for the second year in a row, which is quite incredible. Don't hesitate to ask questions again if I miss some, because I'm not sure I'm reading through everything. No matter how many, when you have a greenhouse, it gets full instantly, and then the overflow gets into the living room and so on. So yeah, that's sadly one that is always the problem. There's never enough space. Looking through the next questions. How many acres do we have in the estate? We have a big estate, about 130 acres in total. Trying to clear some places on the rest of the estate, and old crop terraces, a bit glass. I want to compare prices. The other issue is that for this, as it's a greenhouse, we need to have the glass cut as fish scale, which is with the one rounded end, so that the water drips in the center of the glass and not from the edge, so that the metal doesn't rust, which is quite a pricey process. So I need to compare with the different companies, which ones can do that and at what cost. And also the other issue for a greenhouse is hail, which sometimes happens here. So we need to have, if possible, the safety glass that will shatter if it really gets broken, rather than break and with sharp edges. Do you eat from your garden or prefer your experimenting and studying? Actually, a bit of both, because the tasting is part of the experimentation. So and also it's a pity not to eat what you produce. So I like the experimentation. What I meant is that sometimes it doesn't taste incredible, but at least it tastes interesting. So it's already a plus. So even if it's not incredible, I will still eat it. Any white family. And so you might have seen the video about where we've been planting table grapes. I'm also experimenting on grapes that are not part of the genus Vitis, but close relatives, because there are a lot of species that actually produce edible berries, even if they are not very commonly used as table grapes or even wine grapes. But that's part of my the group of plants I like. I'm quite interested in pelargoniums and impatiens as well. I find impatiens a very fascinating group of plants that project their seeds out, and they are quite rewarding because they grow extremely quickly. They're quite easy to grow because they tell you if they're thirsty. They just get all droopy, and so you water them, and it's as if nothing had happened. So yeah, I like plants that will tell you what to do. Ground below the trees. At the moment, I'm more in the process, so quite a random mix of plants and flowery plants, so I get pollinators, and then whenever I find an unusual seed plant on the side of the road or anything, I will try to collect the seeds and spread them elsewhere where I don't have any. And so I'm really trying to maximize the biodiversity, which means that I don't really work the soil as I should do around the trees. But also I usually in the early summer, so I have the most pollinators, and which means I have fewer diseases on my trees, and also it looks a lot nicer. So it's a bit where if you look at the orchard at the moment, you have very long grass. It looks a bit messy because because I haven't cut the grass. But if you look at the diversity of plants, it's actually really nice. I have a lot of wild orchids coming back in the meadows and things like that. So it's quite rewarding. How are the cows going? They're doing well. They're actually really helpful because they keep the grass cut. This week we had their pasture shredded because we hadn't been maintaining it very well over the last few years, and so there were some broom growing back. So we just shredded one patch so that the grass would grow back. And as we've had a lot of rain, they are going to have a lot of grass in the summer, which is really, really good. My children are lovely, thank you. What age do they start school? In France, it's compulsory from age 3, I think. Clémence actually started a bit earlier, just a couple of mornings a week, and Juliette is going to start in September. So she'll be just under 3. Was it being farmed then? So that's interesting. We purchased the estate in 2016, and before that, it had been planted as a commercial forest in the 90s. Basically 60 acres of Douglas fir. And there was a big storm in 1999, which means that most of the forest was just went down. And they were supposed to replant because they had subsidies for planting Douglas fir at the time. But luckily they didn't, and instead of that, they sold the land to the previous owners of the chateau. Which means that when we arrived, it was not really mature forest, but it was a spontaneous regeneration, which actually made it a lot more work for us because most of the estate wasn't accessible. So we had to reopen a lot of paths and just rediscover the whole estate. But on the other hand, we had only spontaneous seedlings, so very varied forest with a lot of deciduous trees, oaks, ash, even elms, and quite unusual species, sweet chestnut. So it wasn't commercially a viable forest, but it means we had more free hands to do whatever we wanted and to try to put it back in cultivation. So Amy is back, so which means that Juliette probably went down.
My 2-year-old has more stamina than I do.
Yeah, than both of us.
Any tips on getting them to sleep, getting her to sleep before 11 o'clock at night or 10:30 tonight?
I took them to visit an ostrich farm today, which they found quite exciting, I think.
They've been up since 6:30 and she's still only just gone down to sleep.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Have you been discussing all sorts of things?
So a lot of things. I have a very interesting question here. Do we have any problems with invasive species of plants on our estate? So that's a subject I really like because I find that invasive species are actually quite rare. What most people call invasive species are actually non-indigenous species. But when you have a well-balanced ecosystem with a lot of diversity, invasive species struggle a lot more to actually become invasive. So we have some species that are supposedly invasive, like Elant. What's the English name? Ailanthus altissima. It's a big tree that grows on bare land, which is invasive in places, but it's actually invasive only in disturbed places, where basically places that have been completely wrecked beforehand, that on building sites and things like that. But as soon as there are a competition, they're actually not that invasive. We have I can't really think of other invasive species, actually.
Acacia, the false acacia. It's not
Yeah,
really
but
invasive,
it's yeah, again, acacia is yeah, I'm fighting acacias because they grow everywhere and are very thorny. They're not indigenous in the way that, because they were introduced in the 15th or 16th century, I think. But again, it's not an invasive species. It's just a pioneering species, which means that they are growing on our estate because there was a fire in 2003 that left some of the land completely bare, and they were one of the first species to seed themselves, and they need a lot of sun, so they had all the right conditions to grow. But with the proper management, which means that we basically, if we keep cutting them and promote other species, they lose their invasiveness because they get competition. So eventually, it will all balance itself, and we will not get rid of them, but we don't need to, actually. And also, they make very useful fence posts, so we don't want to get rid of them either.
Can I ask if you've spoken much about the greenhouses and the other garden structures or not?
Not a lot.
Because there are a few questions I'm seeing here. Somebody, I think Jill, I've missed who's saying it, but we were asked a question about when we'll be building both greenhouses, and also what we're going to be growing them. And thirdly, Michael was asking about have we cut the glass for them yet?
No, yeah, I answered that.
Okay.
Yeah. When we are going to build them, ask Amy. As soon as possible. And what are we going to grow in them? So my vision is that there will be one working greenhouse for starting seedlings and making plants for the garden and the estate. And the other one will be more of an ornamental greenhouse with exotics. It will be heated with the central heating of the estate, because we have a beautiful wood chip heater that heats the chateau already, that will heat the other buildings and also the greenhouse. So it's a very efficient heater and quite cheap to run, because we have all the wood on the estate. And so I would like to have an ornamental greenhouse with a lot of tropicals and exotics, just in the way they did it in the 18th and 19th century. Basically, my vision for the garden is to do an 18th century garden with a lot of different atmospheres, and with unusual plants that you wouldn't see in every garden. So I would see some tropical plants in a heated greenhouse. I would see a formal garden in front of the chateau, maybe an English garden on the side with more open and romantic settings and things. Maybe, but there will be an exotic garden that I've started planting with a lot of palm trees and quite lush foliage.
Actually, that ties in with a question right at beginning. Was it Erin asked this one about?
Did I miss it?
Did you about the temperature what
Yes.
temperatures we get and whether
Yeah.
there are any? So you answered
Yeah,
that.
I answered that.
And if we have microclimates.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the exotic garden is typically a place where there is a microclimate because we have walls on 3 sides. It's south facing with the forest on the south, so it's quite sheltered from the wind, but still has sun and very enclosed, with hardly any wind. So we will be able to grow some more delicate plants. And also there's a spring there, so it's also quite moist.
Erin says, essentially, Mark is saying that he's a reincarnation of the explorers that brought back exotic plants.
Wow.
You don't say. He, honestly, even on our honeymoon in Uganda, I couldn't use the bath in our lovely resort because he'd filled it with plant cuttings.
Don't say anyone.
Yeah, don't tell anyone. I mean, they were from the wild, and we definitely didn't bring them home.
No.
So what else? In fact, I'm going to tell you some stuff now without you asking questions. I'm going to do some I'm going to do some naughty hinting. Don't jiggle the thing. It's piled on old suitcases. Stop jiggling it.
There was an earthquake. Tell me.
Well, we've got some new animals, and the Patreons are going to find out this week, and everyone else will find out fairly soon, dependent on a couple of things. But it's pretty phenomenal. It kind of makes Highland cows look pretty tame. It's not giraffes, though, I'll give you that. Somebody suggested that last time. The other thing we've got coming is there is not just a second greenhouse. So we've got one greenhouse you're seeing us build now.
Yeah, there are some very exciting projects.
There's the second greenhouse, which compared to the current greenhouse is enormous, with the spiral staircase and the gallery. You'd think that would be the top banana, wouldn't you? But no, there's 2 more huge garden structures coming. We've just had delivery of a gigantic garden structure that probably has a floor, a footprint not far off that of half the chateau.
It's about the size of the chateau.
About the size of the chateau. Yeah. It's gigantic. Another massive antique. Not a greenhouse, but I'm not saying more of that just now.
Mm-hmm.
And the final thing, it's clearly not the final thing, but for the moment.
No, clearly not.
We have a gigantic old-fashioned wind pump that Mark got, and there's something extraordinarily interesting about it.
Yep.
Should we tell them the little secret about? Shh, don't tell anyone.
Yeah, it's a really nice wind pump. It's probably over 100 years old. It's 12 meters tall, which is about the height of the chateau.
Yeah.
And where was it made?
In the factory that made the Eiffel Tower. It's printed on it. It doesn't say, hi, I was made in the same factory as the Eiffel Tower.
No, it says Aciérie de Pompée, which
Mark knows. I wouldn't have known. So
Google would have known.
So we've got the most exciting things coming your way. What we're trying to do slightly on this channel is to, instead of having a mishmash every week of exactly what we're doing that week, although it is following the chronology, we're trying to present you with the projects in a bit more sort of cohesion. So we might be working on 4 projects at the same time, but we'll show you in a single episode. We won't show you more than 2 of those because I feel like it gets really bitty then, and you can't really keep in mind what's going on with each one. And it gives us the opportunity to do some really nice finished kind of film type videos. So that's what we're doing on this channel very much, and I hope you are enjoying that.
No, Lisa, it's not an Aeolian Bollet, sadly, because but it's still really nice actually. There is an Aeolian Bollet not far from ours, actually, near Annonay, and it is a beautiful thing.
What's an Aeolian Bollet?
Bollet was an engineer in the 19th century that designed windmills with a spiral staircase around it, and,
really?
And it was held by cables, and they were really truly beautiful. So ours is a bit more recent. It's probably early 20th century.
Yeah.
Maybe late 19th, actually. It could be any time between 1880 and 1920, I'd say. So it's not a Bollet, but it's still very beautiful, with the wrought iron features on the platform just below the rotor. It's going to be really pretty.
Oh, we have a neighbor, Bienvenue. I don't know if you're French or not, who lives in Pilat.
Nice.
That's a mountain department.
So yeah, actually the Aeolian Bollet I was telling you about is actually not far from yours, just on the way to Annonay from yours. Between I think near Bourg-Argental and Annonay, as far as I remember.
We love that area. What else are we missing? Can you, if we haven't answered your question about the garden, can you reiterate it here? I know I'm not going to tell you which animal it is, but it's very exciting and very, yeah. Anyway, have you got any other garden structures you didn't tell me about?
Yeah, loads, but I'm not going to tell you about.
You can't hide them very easily, though, can you?
The estate is big.
Oh, we didn't tell them about the gigantic project that's going on here at the moment.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, Adonis. Okay, yeah, Adonis, you're absolutely right. I was going to tell them about the Mazo. We've got not one but two Swiss Mazos that we dismantled and brought back here. Savoyard.
It's called the Hacker in Switzerland.
It's basically a little barn chalet. They're chalets that we used as barns, and Mark a while ago bought two of them, dismantled them, brought them back here, and probably next week or the week after we'll be showing you the full reconstruction of one of those mazos, which is going to be used as a garden shed.
Yeah,
it's rather a fancy garden shed.
For those of you who wonder why we would put a chalet in the estate of a chateau in Ardèche, the idea is that we wanted a garden shed, and rather than buying it from Monsieur Bricolage, the local hardware store, where they are actually really bad quality and very expensive for what they are, we found proper antique ones that are over nearly 3 centuries old, and that look amazing. And we did it in the spirit of the follies of the 18th and 19th century, where you would reconstruct an exotic part of the world in your garden. So it makes the estate more interesting, because you have something you don't expect, and also it's just very beautiful. So yeah. So Josephine, Napoleon's wife, actually had a bit she had probably a nicer garden than him, but she had some cows to manage her lawns and her meadows, and she had hired a couple of Swiss shepherds, no, not shepherds, oxmen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she accommodated them into a Swiss chalet she had built for them just in her garden near Paris. So it's exactly the same idea. at La Malmaison.
And then after, so that's another garden structure, at least one. But the other project, we won't go into it in great detail here, but it's going to be coming up and is going to be a big part of our life for a while, is that we, as you know, we're trying to get into sort of innovative but retrospective forms of farming a lot here, and ways at using the land productively and optimizing the use of different parts of the land that have very different characteristics. And some time ago, we got a letter in the post box. It was just dropped into all the sort of landowners in the area, I think, asking if we'd like to take part in an experimental project. If you kick the suitcases again, I'll get very cross. Sorry, a little domestic there. So they're asking if we want to take part in an experimental farming agricultural project sponsored by the state. We went to several meetings, we applied for it, and we got a good-sized grant to get involved in this project. And it's going to take, how much of the land is it going to use?
So it's going to be about 3 hectares of land. So
About
7 acres, 8
8
acres,
or 9 acres.
And so we are going to clear the forest over there and implement some keyline design, which is basically a farming technique that comes from Australia originally, in which you plant lines of trees, make ditches that follow the contour lines in order to facilitate the infiltration of water into the soil. And between these lines and ditches, you have some arable land that you can farm. So you leave in our case, it will be space for a combine harvester, so that we can grow some cereals in between the lines of trees.
Yeah, oriented swales. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that's the thing.
But they're calling it, yeah. Where did they get the name keyline design? Because that must come from.
Keyline design is the general design of the project, where you put swales, you put lines of trees, and you make some water reserves in key points on the landscape. So it's
it's a mixture of all the different types of agriculture, and it's working with agroforestry, which we're really keen on as well. So it's going to be a massive project and an important one as well. It's about moving forward with how we improve our use of the land. And I think an area like this, it's very interesting because we have undulating hills and mountains and very variable landscapes. So it's not just the big flat plains of intensive agriculture, but what you can see from the past, luckily we have access to aerial photographs since the 1940s even, don't we? And what you've seen is this kind of yo-yoing of one extreme to another. It started off as and we know from the Napoleonic maps that this was a multiple use area. So within the estate, we had vineyards and arable land and grazing land, and things were used according to their suitability. So where there were springs and what the estate needed. And then all of a sudden, these sort of common agricultural policies come in, and they do things like cutting all the trees down and suddenly putting arable everywhere, and then getting rid of all the arable and just growing commercial forest. And so you see these sort of abrupt changes every couple of decades. And I think this is what the heart of what we're trying to do with the estate is, to return a bit back to that multiple land use, understanding the land, playing with the land, making sure it works, what grows where, and how we can support our local community better with that.
And also make the landscape more interesting.
Yeah.
Because when you walk in commercial forest for hours and hours, it's not varied at all. And you get a lot more diversity if you have more open areas with meadows and crops, because you get a lot of species that will only grow on the edge of the forest with the different birds, reptiles, and a lot of animals.
And
So-
what I love here as well is that it's quite like we're working. This gives us an opportunity. So we got a decent sized grant, and we're able to spend it as we not as we like. We've got to do the project, but we can employ who we like. So we've been able to work with 2 guys from the village, both parents of kids in Clement's class. Coincidentally, well, not really coincidentally, because we're all quite a tight community. And so one will be preparing the land and the forest and cutting it to in places to set up the project, and the other will be farming the project for us. And what I love is we have these 2 markets a week. On a Friday, it's for region sort of people from the area, but not necessarily that close by. But on a Sunday morning, it's only people selling products that have been produced within a few miles of here. And last Sunday, I just had the most wonderful time. Really, it really hit home because we don't live near big supermarkets, so we do a lot of our shopping at these places. And seeing the diversity of what is produced just from our few valleys around here, I got butter, cream, eggs, amazing cheeses, vegetables, soups. There's meats. There's a butcher we go to who has their own farm and only uses meat from their farm. It's a really dynamic area for food production, but local food production. And I'd love to sort of become a part of that here. Not saying we're going to become productive farmers and get up early for the market. That would be a bit of a stretch.
You will do that.
But I really enjoy the idea of being part of returning land use to something other than just big policies set out by central government. So, I mean, we still have to overcome a few hurdles for that, because to even cut down Douglas fir, which, they're trees which don't support any life underneath them, we have to pay a fine essentially, because there's a policy on change of land use and cutting trees down. But I think it's worth it in order to start trying to bring this land back to its diversity. Biodiversity is, like Erin says, is at the heart of what we believe in here, and what we believe regenerating the landscape and our relationship with food is all about. If you don't know him, there's a guy called Guy who runs Riverford Foods in the UK, which are one of the earlier veg box organisations. And he's got if you look up Riverford Farms, I think, or Foods on Instagram, he's always putting all sorts of stuff up about how we can change farming for the better and improve our relationship with food. And I find what he says very interesting, so give him a follow. People want to see the market. I just get so embarrassed being filmed around local people. I don't know, and I also have really random conversations with people that probably shouldn't be recorded.
Somebody asked me if you wanted a donkey today.
Oh gosh. Me specifically?
Yeah.
Why me? Why do you think I want a donkey?
Why not?
Who asked you if I wanted a donkey?
A neighbor.
Oh, it's not Alexandre, is it?
No.
Oh no. This is how we end up with animals. I'm just trying to get...
No, we're not having a donkey. Are there any local varieties of vegetables that are true standouts? I'm thinking more of a variety of fruit that I've experimented 3 years ago. It's a peach called, the variety is Tooth China November. And it's a very local variety, apparently, that I found, I think, 2 or 3 records of it on the internet from 1920s German horticultural paper. and a Dutch horticultural paper. And it apparently originates from Italy, but it was in one of these 1930s journals, they said it was grown from a plant nursery in Vion, which is in the Rhône Valley, not far from ours. And I haven't really found it anywhere else, but somebody sold it to me at a local plant fair 3 years ago. And so it's a white peach that ripens very, very late. And we've had this year our first 4 peaches in mid-November, which was
amazing.
Really amazing. And they were actually really tasty and really nice. And I find it really interesting because we're also quite high for growing peaches, because we're 580 meters high, which is not really the right climate for peaches. But this one was really tasty, and it ripened in November, which is just incredible. It's really amazing to be able to taste a peach from your garden in November.
There have been a few questions. We can't see very well because it's quite small. Adonis told me I needed to set up the laptop with the chat and the phone with the camera, but I didn't manage it in time. Next time. But I've seen a couple of questions about how we plan things and when we'll finish one and start another. And the thing is, there is an element of us taking on too much in one go, but there is also, and not always having a firm plan in place. But I think you can be too rigid, and it's sometimes some of the best opportunities and best projects come by being open to new things. So this huge swales project, the key lime design, if we'd received that letter in the post back when it was, like last autumn,
September,
and we had looked at our very careful planning list, we'd have said, well, no, we have no time for this, put it away. And now, but we kind of went with the flow to see whether it was interesting or not, and that's maybe taken over priority from something else. But mostly these projects are so massive and so unusual that often either the help we need or the products we need or the weather we need, they stop us from moving forward with something. And so if you're just completely stuck and you go, well, I can't do that project until I finish this project, well, you'll never move forward. You have to be able to kind of let go of the intense planning urge and go, okay, well, I know what I've got to do on each of these, and I'll do what I can do when somebody is available, or when the things are available, or when I'm in the right mood, or when the kids are in a good mood. What tends to happen is we'll pick something up and then it'll get on a roll and it'll move and move and move, and we move forward quickly with it.
And so the greenhouse is not finished because we didn't have time to. So it would have been nice to have a finished greenhouse for the spring to start the vegetable season, but it's not vital either. We'll have it for next year, and which means that there's no rush to finish it really this summer. So we'll do it at our own pace and aim to have it finished by next spring.
I mean, I'm a sort of completer of things, and it does drive me a bit crazy that there's so many open-ended projects, but it's just a learning curve for me as well to leave some of those open and be happy with that. Bringing in YouTube is quite interesting into the garden projects, because we're definitely not people who do stuff just for YouTube. Otherwise, we'd be doing nice, neat little projects that can be finished and look good and get viral views and move on to the next one. Because people can get quite frustrated with us having lots of different projects, but then, well, they're clearly not our audience. But what it does do is when you get some feedback on a project like the greenhouse, and you get people going, oh my goodness, that's really cool, especially after we did the one that had covered sort of 2 months of work when we'd been really stalled with it because of the weather. We'd just been cut off at a point when we were moving forward. When you get a huge amount of really positive feedback, you go, oh, look, oh, this one's going really well. Let's try and push forward. Let's do a bit more. Let's have some more to show them next week. And so it's not like we're not the kind of people who are doing YouTube calculatedly to earn a load of money. Otherwise, well, if we were going about it a very bad way. But we are going about, what it does do is sometimes help us to focus on to one project that we really want to get going and really want to move forward with. So it can give you that bit of encouragement. I think any sort of exterior encouragement can help you to sort of get to the finish line on a project that can get a bit dispiriting. The weather was really rough this year, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had an exceptional amount of rain. And but on the other hand, the other thing about YouTube is that when you have a lengthy project that takes ages and ages, where we do the same thing over and over again over weeks, it's not something we can really show on YouTube, because it would get extremely boring to have us sorting stones for several weeks in a row, or I think we would lose everybody if we did that. But we still have to do it, so that's we can't always show the project from start to finish, or we would have to show it 1 year later after we've started it. So we have a question about the sewage pond, which is that's exactly the same issue. So it is not quite completed. It's really nearly there. I've planted some weeds in about 3 months ago. And with the rain we've had, they've been growing quite well. But it's something we need to have. We need to have a decent amount of reeds on it before we can start using them, so that the filtration system can actually work without having a big pond of poo sitting there, and us having to puddle around to plant reeds in it, which wouldn't be very pleasant.
No. And you also have to bear in mind that we are also working on the Chateau and the coach house at the same time with all of this going on. And so things like, the sewage ponds has been, urgent for us to move into the coach house. But then, because we can't do it until the spring, until the weather improves, we can't do that. And so sometimes we're doing more work indoors, sometimes we're doing more work outdoors, aren't we?
Exactly.
Depends. This last couple of weeks we've been really pushing on with the coach house, I think, because we just need to move in, and it's been because as you saw in the last video, if you watched our other channel, the plumber came, and so we are really nearly there now. And once we're in there, that will be.
We just need to fix a few leaks that we hadn't spotted because there had never been any water in the pipes. So it's when you first turn the tap on, it's always an interesting moment, because you have water spraying everywhere in the room you just painted. So that's part of the fun.
And so, like, one of the reasons I wanted to do a catch up this week was, well, one, because shall I say this? I don't think I could get a video ready in time because we've been so focused on the coach house.
What?
So I was saying, I'm admitting the secret that only you and Adonis and Margot and I know, which is we decided to do a live because we couldn't possibly get a video ready in time. That was mostly just because I was going a bit insane with childcare and with visitors and with the amount of work we've got to do at the moment. So we thought, well, it's good actually. When I started thinking about doing a live Q&A, we realized that it's a really good point in this channel to do it, because we have been showing lots of different projects and we have got more coming up, and it's a good way of kind of priming you for them and answering the questions, and also getting a sense of what you guys are thinking about the channel and what you're enjoying and what you want to know more about. And it kind of came from a comment on one of our videos, I think on the Chateau channel, asking me about what the trees were around the estate, and what different trees are. And I thought, oh yeah, actually we often don't give much of a sense of the whole picture here, and it's quite difficult to do. But we could try and do some more videos like that, big picture stuff. We did some on the other channel. And so, in fact, over on the Chateau channel, somebody texted me the other day, a long-time supporter, saying, by the way, why are you moving out of the Chateau? And I realised that, well, it's a long time since we explained that. And she was saying, well, what major works have you got to do? And so I think it's worth taking this time sometimes to really interact with you guys and find out what your questions are about what's going on here, what we're planning, because it's such a big project with the estate and this huge chateau and all its outbuildings, and we've got it all in our heads sometimes a bit too much, and but we don't always, because we don't want to keep repeating ourselves, explain it. So maybe soon we need to do a Q&A on the other channel as well. I've realized we've been chit-chatting for an hour now. It's 11 o'clock at night for us. Judy, I think you missed Judy. Judy's asking after the greenhouses and on what's the next project. We talked a lot about the other garden structures, I think, before you got back from Toronto tonight. And the other greenhouse will be a big project. I can't see that being done before this time next year. Can you? We can try. It's huge though, like really big. I'm just looking at other things.
We have greenhouse, wind pump, other garden structure.
Yeah, the massive one. But we also need to look at more not prosaic things really, but we need to look at proper landscaping plans. We've got to we're speaking with a very exciting landscape designer who we met through a friend of a friend locally, and who designs things for princesses in the Middle East and all sorts of fabulous people. But he and Mark just get on like a house on fire. So he's agreed to help with our little project. So we're talking with him about how to plan the area around the chateau.
What I haven't seen anything he has done. He didn't send me any picture of his work. But I had a really good feeling with him because he's a botanist rather than a designer. And that's what I value the most in a garden. I find designer gardens deadly boring, because you have those gardens where you have designers planting a field of white roses that will be visually very impressive. But if you look closely, they're all the same, and I find that extremely boring. And what I really clicked with that designer, because he saw all my quite rare and unusual plants in the pots, and he knew most of them, and that's one from the Canaries, I like that, and that's
it was really funny story, that one, actually, because it was this is another one of the power of saying yes. It's like that film Yes Man, when you just say yes to nearly everything, which we do, and gets us into all sorts of trouble. But it was Mark's birthday a couple of years ago, and I had a local friend who we often go around hers, and she's got quite an international family. She's French, and it was Mark's, I won't tell you which birthday, but it was a big celebration, and I was a bit frazzled by entertaining. I'm not a natural entertainer as much as I'd like to be. And they were asking, and my friend suddenly said, oh, can I bring along my sister? And can I bring along a friend of the family, and then my cousin or my nephew? Anyway, she was like, can I bring like 8 to 10 people? Suddenly kind of another quarter of the people that we'd already invited. And I was sort of, I can't go. And I just went, all right, yeah, why not? And she came along, and this guy was one of them. And Mark just went off with him for practically the whole party, and they were just rushing around the garden pointing out plants and things. So, just saying yes to things can really open you up to all sorts of experiences. So yeah, it was a good party in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, really nice. When will my arboretum be open to the public? Well, it's I like the trees to be a bit grown, so it's at the moment it's not very impressive because they're all you can see a collection of twigs.
Yeah.
But I hope that in a few years' time they will be nice enough that I'll find them worth showing.
Alan's asking when we'll be open to the public. He'd love to visit. So although we don't have paying guests, we're open. It depends on the time of year, what we're doing. Do always send an email if you're in the area or you're French and local, because sometimes we're around, sometimes we have time to show people around. And, again, although I should be saying don't come over unless you have an invitation, we did say yes to some people coming last year who wanted to stay here but we couldn't accommodate them, but we said they could come and have a picnic here if they didn't expect too much. And as a result of that meeting, we're going to be hosting an international level concert later this year, which is another story.
She said yes to you.
I said yes. So kind of we are open to sharing our place with people, but we're not doing it in any concerted manner at the moment. I think it's just too much to take on to start opening to the public, because there's all sorts of things you have to do. But that is our aim. That is where we want to get to without too much delay, even before it's finished, because I think people love to see the progress.
Basically we're happy to open for people who won't be expecting what they would expect if they were buying a ticket. And so it's always a bit messy at ours, because we have hoses in the garden, we have trenches, animals, and you might have to climb over an open trench through the garden. But we still have things that we enjoy showing. Yeah. And so just ask, and we might say yes.
And we've had, we've had our patrons come and visit, and some making repeat visits, and that's all because we haven't got very many, and because a lot of people live a long way away. We tend to just say, oh, come for a whole weekend then when we do our Patreon weekends, and we have a good laugh. And so, we've built a good community on here, but in terms of the wider public, that's not a big thing for us right now. It's just, especially with little kids, they're not in full-time childcare or education. And even with Margot here, who will only be here till the end of the summer, it's still a lot. We like to spend as much time as we can with the kids, even when they're at school, they'll still be only going 4 days a week, mornings and afternoons, and they're back home for an hour and a half at lunchtime. It's not a lot to be trying to achieve what we're doing at the moment. So where is everybody? Marilyn's asking, how about a couple of days a year when the grounds are open? And yes, we did do that twice. We joined in the Journée de Patrimoine. But both times we took 2 weeks to prepare for it, because people do expect, if they're coming to visit for that, a reasonable level of at least not falling down holes and breaking their legs. And we have to tidy up the mess, the wheelbarrows, the junk, the plastic that's blown away, the just everything that comes with a building site. We have to clear up. You may have noticed we're sort of perfectionists with stuff, and we want to make sure that people see the best of it, even if it's a work in progress. So we do little maps for the estate, and we do things. Then we have to have multiple people helping us to staff the day, because otherwise people do unbelievable things and help, wander into bits of your house and, help themselves to things. So you have all the staff involved in that, and then a clear up afterwards. So it's a big thing. It would take a month out of our work. So it's a bit too much. We didn't do it last year or this year. We may consider it again in the future. But I think we'd like to just get a bit further on with some of our projects before then.
Yeah, and the other thing is that we're in the middle of nowhere, so parking is a problem when we have big events with many people. So it's always a bit of a problem when you have people who need to cross on the driveway and
we've got a driveway that you can only get one car down, and it's 1 kilometer long. So we need parking people with walkie-talkies, letting people in or out, and it's on a dangerous bend. So logistically, it's a big issue at the moment until we're more set up for it. We did have a lot of fun the 2 days we opened up, but what we do is we open up to groups. So we have schools coming to visit. We have scouts and guides who have their summer camps on our land. Anything the local tourist board asks us, we say yes. We had, I think I told this story before, when Mark said yes to something and I hadn't really understood what it was all going to be about, and we were packing to go on holiday, and I looked out the front lawn and there was suddenly a catering van on the front lawn. I said, what's going on? Well, there's a cross-country run coming through here. It's an overnight one. Sort of, okay. And so, I'm just packing, and then every so often I look out the window and there's just a sort of runners pelting through the garden, and then all their supporters turn up. And so every so often I'll just go downstairs and clap some people, and I was just packing to go on holiday. So we do open up our space and our land to groups and the community and wider people, but we're not in it for just sort of opening up to the public at this point. We're just not sophisticated enough for that.
Do the larger animals have barns? They have a shed in the field. It's not a proper barn, but they are Highland cows. They're very hairy, and they come from Scotland, where the climate is worse than here.
Yeah.
Actually, we noticed they don't actually like to use their shed, so. They'd rather sit in the grass and just wait for the rain to finish.
Yeah.
Which doesn't last for days like in Scotland.
So we've now been going for 1 hour and 10 minutes. I think we can save this. You can save up your questions for another session.
Yep. And if you have special things you'd like to hear about more, don't hesitate to drop a comment. And
we do
we'll,
try and respond to your
yeah.
comments, especially ones with
And
specific
yeah, and if you
questions.
have special interests in things that might seem to us a bit uninteresting, we don't always we try to tell you about what we find interesting, but you might have other ideas.
And just Erin is completely obsessed with whether we eat beetroots or not, and whether we grow them. I love them. You like
We
them
have
as well, don't you?
I love
She doesn't like them. She says they're
well,
overfeeding.
there are some really interesting varieties of beetroots, actually. There's
And
the
there's
Chioggia,
like
the Chioggia beetroot.
There's
It's
sort
an
of
Italian
colours,
variety. Is incredibly sweet and really good, and not earthy at all, and so one worth trying.
Yeah, love them. If you roast them really gently and in olive oil, I don't find them earthy at all. I find them sweet and delicious. Anyway, ending on beetroot. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll record this, so if you missed the beginning, you can go back and watch it. If I press the right button now and don't lose it all. But otherwise, have a lovely evening. So many names I recognise. Sorry we couldn't name check you all, but we've been trying to keep an eye on the questions as we go through. But we really appreciate all of your support. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice afternoon or evening or morning, depending on where you are. Bye.
Bye.